do not settle. If what you really want right now is actually up here and you are settling for something that is down here, then you're also wasting time where you could be figuring out, what do I need to do? How can I improve myself that I become someone who also matches something that is up here and then can also create that. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope that everyone is doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in. I was recently going through my older videos from this year, seeing and reflecting on what we have talked about, and I came across this one where we were talking about how to be a bad bitch. And I thought, you know what? I think it is time to continue that conversation. So yeah, that is the plan for today. For me, the word bad bitch is really just an empowering term that I use in my close circles or with my friends. Like, we will often say, oh, that's a real bad bitch, or that was a real bad bitch moment of mine. But I think it really just comes down to being someone who is confident and knows who they are. For me, there are a lot of things that represent a bad bitch, and so let's talk about that today. Also, this really has nothing to do with whether you are a man or a woman or whatever, just because of the word bitch. It's really just an episode on how to be your best version, I guess. Step 1 is get rid of drama and toxicity. So I have definitely had my fair share of unhealthy situations and toxicity in my life. I think really in every area of my life, not always because I wanted to. It was just all around me in really intense ways at times. And I think at some point I didn't even know anything other than that. And so I just started to play my part in it. But I think as a bad bitch, you do not have time for drama or toxicity in your life, because I eventually realized if you really want to be your best version, that takes a lot of focus and commitment and consistency. And that is impossible if you are continuously being sucked into other people's drama or your own drama, because those will all be voices in your head that will distract you and confuse you. I think when we stay in these toxic and unhealthy friendships or relationships or just situations, it's kind of like a fog that will cloud your brain, and it will stop you from becoming your best version, and it will also stop you from going where you want to go, because you start going wherever life or random things take you, because you are not hearing your own inner voice, because all of that other stuff is so loud. And so you cannot take the steps that you need to take to go to where you want to go. And then eventually we sit there and we realize we're not happy, and we're not happy with our lives because we haven't been taking the choices that we need to create our own happiness, because all of that other shit was so loud that we couldn't even hear our own inner voice to be able to create our own happiness. But it's interesting, because even though toxic and unhealthy situations can be extremely draining and hurtful and traumatizing in the bad cases, we as humans really love drama. Like, when you look at the books that we read and the songs that we listen to and the movies that we watch, a lot of it is very toxic and unhealthy and dramatic. It's kind of like whoever has the loudest, craziest story in the room wins. And yeah, I mean, from those years of my life, I have stories up my sleeve where I really wonder sometimes. I mean, we could turn that into a whole soap opera, but eventually I just realized I'm sick of this. I don't want this anymore, because I want more space for true happiness and more space to really figure out who I really am. So, what is toxic? I think it is definitely a term that is being thrown around very easily nowadays. It's like, this person's toxic, that person's toxic, this person is toxic. It's like, not everything that is different or goes against our own beliefs is immediately toxic. I think it's important to be cautious with that. For me, the word toxic represents things such as the lies, the manipulations, the playing games. It's the way we blame other people, the way we cause pain to get attention. It's the way we talk about other people. It's the way we talk about our own life. It's the way that we throw our own insecurities on other people. It's the way we discard people. Like that for me is all toxic. And I think eventually, after experiencing a lot of that, I was just sick of it. Like I was sick of it. And for me, that decision of no longer wanting so much toxicity in my life, in terms of friendships and relationships and situations and just life in general, that decision really gave me the opportunity to see, who am I even when I'm not continuously upset or confused or overwhelmed? So how do we get rid of drama or toxicity in our lives? I think in the beginning, I thought to live a drama-free or toxic-free life, I had to get rid of all things and all situations and all people who still feed into that in some way, until eventually I realized that's not really going to work. I think it's more an internal choice you need to make before anything else. Because even if you do get rid of everything and everyone that represents toxicity in your life, you will eventually in life come across new challenges and new people. And I think we don't want to be afraid of that or be trying to run away from that. And so you just decide internally, I want less drama in my life. I no longer want to feed into drama and toxicity. And then the funny part is, the minute you say that internally, it will change the actions that you take. It will change the words that you speak. And then, first thing, a lot of people that still feed into that or situations, they will just fall away because you become uninteresting. And then when you still do have something in front of you that represents toxicity, you will react differently because your mindset is different. You are different. And I think that's the most important choice we need to make before anything else. And yes, there will also be moments in our lives where we will have to deliberately step away from people or situations that no longer serve us. And that can be very painful at times, and it's not easy. But I also realized that eventually staying in situations that don't serve you and not being who you really are becomes more painful than leaving. And I think that's when you know it has to change, because you never want to become used to being a version of yourself that you are not actually, just to keep someone or something in your life. Like, it's never worth it. And with living a drama-free or toxic-free life, I do not mean living a boring life. I just mean living a life where there is no low that comes after every high, because that's also what these situations often look like. And for me, I find a life like that much more exciting and less boring than a life with that. Step 2 is embracing all of you. So for me, a bad bitch is not someone who dresses like this or speaks like this or presents themselves in that way. None of that. It is just someone who is authentically and unapologetically themselves. I think that's what it really comes down to. The thing is, the world will often put us into boxes based on things such as our appearance, our status, our gender, where we were born, things like that. It's kind of like we as a world see you as that, and that means these things are possible for you and these things are not. And in theory, that might make sense if we were robots, but we're not. I think we as human beings are way more complex than that, and who we are or what we want to do does not always fit into those boxes. And so for me, a big part of being your best version and staying true to yourself comes down to staying true to all facets and all sides of you, even if they might be very different, and even if they might not fit into those boxes that the world expects you to fit into. And so an example that I can share from my own life is that I have the side of me that really loves makeup and fashion and jewelry and skincare. Like when I was 12, 13, all I would watch on YouTube for hours and hours and hours on end were makeup tutorials and hauls and fashion hauls. And I love doing my makeup. I love doing makeup for other people. And since then, I've just had this interest in this whole world. And it's always been more than just a hobby for me. It's been something that I've wanted to pursue in some kind of way. Then I have this other part of me that really loves learning and reading books and talking about life and experiences and topics that I find important, and working with people and working with charities and doing interviews with people, and also getting into business and finances and all of that. Like there's this whole other side of me that kind of exists as well. And those have also always been things that I've wanted to pursue in some way. When I think back to when I was younger, I really didn't care about any of that. Like I was just myself, and I followed whatever interests I had and whatever things I found fascinating. Like back then I was dancing ballet for 10 years. And at the same time, I was also doing Taekwondo, which is a form of martial arts, also for 10 years. And I remember everyone was always so confused because those things were so contradictory and so different. But I just loved both. Like I loved both kinds of people that were in both areas, and I loved both interests. And so I just followed that, and I didn't really think about it anymore. But then, as you grow up, you realize that the world will push you more and more into boxes, and you will feel that more and more. And so the more I started to present myself online, talking about things that I found important or interesting, and the more I started working with charities and doing interviews with people and following things such in the area of business, and just also working in areas that are more male dominated, I think, the more I started to feel that this other part of me was no longer welcome, and I need to make a choice. Like either I go into this world or I go into that world. Due to this idea that society will often place on women, it's kind of like either you are taken seriously and you have something to say and you are working with people and you are in that field, or you are pursuing something in terms of makeup or fashion or jewelry, but both of those really don't make sense. Like you cannot be taken seriously if you pursue both things because they just don't work with each other. And so I felt like, this isn't all going to work out. I have to make a choice. And these are not ideas that I just pulled from thin air, or something I read. I've had multiple endless moments where people have said things to my face or said comments or whatever that somehow further perpetuated this idea that I will never be taken seriously in both, and you have to make a choice. So eventually I did make a choice, and for me it was more important to feel like I am taken seriously and more important to work with people and work in topics that I found important. And so I just deleted that side of me as if it never even existed. Like I stopped watching things that I found interesting. I stopped sketching. I stopped designing. I stopped being interested in makeup. I stopped buying makeup. I stopped doing my makeup the way I actually like to do it. Like I just deleted that part of me entirely because I felt like if I keep that going, I will not be able to do what I want to do in that whole other world in a way. Until at some point when I started asking myself more, who am I really and what do I really want to do? I started to realize that I have both sides to me. It's just the way it is. And I have a lot of different other sides to me as well, but I do have these sides, and both are things that are very important to me, and both are things that I want to pursue. And I am sick of it. Like I'm sick of not being who I am just to fit into some kind of standard. I want to be who I really want to be, and I want to be both. And so now I spend a lot of time designing and sketching things and learning about makeup and buying new makeup products. And I started my own jewelry brand now where I design and sketch a lot of things because I just realized I want to pursue all parts of me. I want to make sure that all parts of me have the space to exist and be and create in this lifetime. I know this is a more superficial example, but the point I'm trying to make is that I think we all have different parts to ourselves and we all have different sides to ourselves, and those things can change over time depending on what kind of phase we are in our lives, what situation we are faced with, who we are evolving into, what we realize, what we have gone through. Like, it can always change. We cannot place ourselves in this box and say, this is all you will be in this lifetime, and make sure that you never go outside of that box. Just stay in there and be happy with what's in there. Meanwhile, who we are and what we want to experience might want to go for more than just what is in that little box that we ourselves or the world has created for us. Also, I think we should all just be breaking more rules in terms of what the world tells us we can and can't do, because as long as you're not hurting anyone, just be yourself. Seriously, fuck it. Fuck what other people think. Listen to the music that you want to listen to. Dress the way that you want to dress. Follow the passions you want to follow. Speak what you believe in. It really doesn't matter. Like, life is way too short to not do that in some way. If you're a guy and you want to wear makeup, please wear makeup. If you are a 60-year-old man who has never danced a day in his life and you want to start dancing hip hop professionally, please go dance. If you are a lawyer or a doctor and you want to start making intense rap music on the side, please start rapping. If you are 80 years old and you want to start going out every weekend, please start partying. If you are a ballerina who wants to start martial arts, please start fighting. Like, the world will put you into boxes, and if those boxes don't fit you, again, as long as you're not hurting anyone, just burn them. And then point 3 is do not settle. I was recently talking to a friend of mine, and she was sharing with me that she went out to this party where she was invited by some other people who she really doesn't like, and she hasn't liked them in a really long time. But she ended up still going and staying for a couple of hours just because going there was still better than being at home by herself. And, you know, we've all been there. We've all done that. We've all said yes to situations that were not what we really wanted because we were settling. But I think one of the core things you need to implement to be a bad bitch is to not settle. I think what really happens is that whenever we don't have access to our own inner happiness or our own inner confidence, we start going out more into situations or people or just life outside of us, looking for things to fill that void. And the more we are feeling some kind of desperation because we need something to fill up what we are not managing to fill up ourselves, that's when we settle for things that are not what we really want, because we are seeing something that is not what we want, and we would normally not say yes to that, but we are saying yes to that because that is still better than not having anything at all. And that kind of mindset can easily create relationships and friendships and just situations and a life in general where we are not really happy and we are accepting things that are not what we really want and what we know we deserve, because that is still better than the fear of not having anything at all and the fear of potentially having to let go of something that no longer serves us. And then we say, well, I'm just going to settle for that until I get what I really want, and then I'm going to say bye to this. But that's not really an approach, I think, that will really create fulfillment or happiness and independence in our lives. In my eyes, in that kind of a situation, the bad bitch kind of thing to do, and I'm still also working on this, is to say, okay, what am I feeling right now? Why am I trying to settle for something that's not actually what I want? And then don't settle. and work through the discomfort of whatever that is creating and see why is it creating that. So what is lacking in you that you are trying to find in something that is actually not what you really want? What do you have so little of that you would go into an environment that doesn't serve you just to get that? Where is that desperation coming from? And then try and give yourself more of that. Try and see how you can create more of that for yourself. In the end, it really just comes down to one, confidence in knowing that there is no need for you to settle for anything less than what makes you happy and what you really want, because you can get there. You have to have confidence in that. And then also knowing that if what you really want right now is actually up here and you are settling for something that is down here, then you're also wasting time where you could be figuring out, what do I need to do? How can I improve myself? How can I work on myself more, that I become someone who also matches something that is up here and then can also create that? In my experience, I have never managed to settle for something that was not actually what I wanted, to just bridge time or wait a little bit until what I really want miraculously appears in my life. Because when I'm settling, that means I'm playing down here and what I really want is up here. And it's not possible for me to play down here and then just wait until what I really want kind of appears out of thin air. Like, the only way I've ever managed to get what I really wanted in whatever area of my life was to let go of whatever I was settling for and then sit with the discomfort of what that creates and see what is it showing me about me, and then working on how I can level up, how I can work on myself to match what I really want. And then you just sit there, you wait it out, and you don't settle for anything that is less than that. You just sit it out. You are patient. You know that wherever you are is wherever you need to be. And then what you really want will come and match you. That's the only way it has ever worked for me. And of course, there is a big difference between not settling for what you don't want and knowing your worth, and then bordering to a place where you just start saying, I'm not going to settle for this, I'm not going to settle for that, but I'm also not going to work on getting anything other than that, and everything is just below me. Like, I'm not going to settle for that. Because I've had so many moments in my life where I have, for example, had to work with people or do jobs where in that moment I knew if I could, I would not settle for this. I would do something other than that already, something higher up. But I knew that I would only be able to get to where I want if I have that experience first. Like, you can't skip steps. And so I think there it's like a fine line between making sure that you are still experiencing life and you are doing whatever you need to do to get to where you want to go, and then still not accepting things that are not what you deserve or what is good for you. I think an easy way to feel the difference is to ask yourself, am I still growing? Because often when we settle for things, there is no growth. We are just accepting something where we are stagnating, because that is still better than nothing at all. And so, just asking yourself, am I still growing through this? Because sometimes life will also push you out of your comfort zone, and it might feel like I'm settling for something that I actually don't want, even though you are having a very valuable experience that will get you to where you know you actually want to go. Like, I think it's a very fine line to distinguish between those two. There are so many more elements for me that represent a bad bitch, or someone who is confident and knows who they are. We touched on a few other things in my last video about this, and I would love to make many more videos about this in the future because I can think of so many things. But for me, I think what it really comes down to is to just know your worth. Like, know that you are worthy of love and respect and happiness and fulfillment and beauty and all of that, all of it. But the only person who can make sure that you take the steps you need to take to get there. The only person who can continue to work on yourself, the only person who can make sure you do not settle for anything less than that is you. Like, no one else is going to do that for you. All right, that is all I wanted to share for today. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed, make sure that you have subscribed and like and comment and all of that. Thank you so much. I hope you have a beautiful morning, evening, night, wherever you are. And I'm very much looking forward to connecting with you in my next episode.